that far from Dedham to Foxborough, but as we know, traffic, I guess. So again, thanks for having me. My name's Bill O'Donnell. I'm from Norwood, and it's always good to come down to Foxborough. I know Vicki Lowe, she does such a great job for the seniors and for everyone at Foxborough. We've been down here a few times before. So she just asked me to come down and talk a little bit about the Registry of Deeds, and I appreciate everyone showing up and your attendance. When you think about it, the Registry of Deeds is an arm of government many people don't know much about, but the biggest asset most of us have are our homes. So what I'll talk about is a little bit, Vicki asked me to talk a little bit about what's going on at the Registry of Deeds, what have you done, and just some of the consumer issues like homesteads and mortgage discharges and things of that sort. First of all, I became Register of Deeds in 2002, and what I tried to do at the registry, I grew up in Norwood, went to Zavarian Brothers High School, was fortunate enough to go to school down in Washington, D.C., and had 3 years worth of experience with Joe Moakley's office while I was down there. So Congressman Moakley, you learned to really try to deliver for people, and you learn about the good of government. I came back here for law school up at Boston College, and then probably like many of you, you get involved locally. I ran for town meeting, but with a representative town meeting in Norwood and planning board. And I was an assistant district attorney for then district attorney Bill Delahunt a long time ago. So you learn, I believe in public service, you learn about the good of public service. I always tell Bill Delahunt it was the best job I ever had being an assistant district attorney. You got to prosecute cases down Rentham Court, worked with people like Paul Doherty way back in the Foxborough Police Department. It was the best job I ever had, except at the first of the month. So you get in the private sector, and now they have 3 kids, and 2 of them are in college. I'm glad I did that. And so what I've tried to do is learn, bring to the registry some of the things I learned in the private sector as an attorney. When you have, staff to pay and vendors to pay, government does things right, but I've also tried to take that private sector mentality to the Registry of Deeds. So in 2002, which does seem a long time ago according to my kids, but it wasn't that long ago. And when we got to the Registry of Deeds, they didn't even have email there. And there was issues. There was a year's worth of mail with documents that needed to be recorded, sitting in boxes there. And I really said it was a paralysis of paper. So we started the cornerstone of our modernization initiatives, and Vicki asked us to talk about some of the things you've done at the registry. The cornerstone of, I wanted to modernize the Registry of Deeds, and the cornerstone of that effort was to bring a new computer system in, a new document management system in, to kind of streamline the operation. And when I mentioned streamlining the operation, we try to use the advances of in technology to make things better down there. And I have to thank the employees. The things I talk about, I still play hockey, believe it or not. Thursday night I'm going to be playing at Foxborough. I'm playing with kids I coach. They're 25 years old and they're too fast. I can't catch up with them. But you learn things from sports, and what I learned a long time ago from different people, there's no I in team. So some of the things I'm talking about, it's because the people at the registry did it, and the staff did it. My dad climbed poles for the Boston Edison. He was in Local 369. There was a union down there. Sometimes people don't embrace change, but down at the registry we did. So when you bring advances in technology like new scanning equipment, new computer equipment, saying, hey, we got to change things up here. You're going to have to learn the computer and try to make things work. Everyone embraced it, and it really worked out. It reduced our waiting times. It started making a dent in that year's worth of mail that was sitting there. And we don't have those situations now. When I talk about advances in technology, it wasn't just for the employees. We have 45 computers sprinkled around the Registry of Deeds. And it's open to the public to use. So we're located on High Street in Dedham, 649 High Street. We're across from the gold-domed Superior Court. But those computers there, they're not just for the lawyers or the title examiners or the engineers to use. They're for everybody, and they're for the public, and they're for you if you want to come down and use the computers. What have we done with the computers? Well, first of all, we have a website. And again, the website is www.norfolkdeeds.org. That website is an information tool. So if you know first-time buyers, Some of you may have children or grandchildren, relatives that might be wanting to buy a house, or maybe you bought years ago and you want to refresh your memory about what needs to be done. We have information for first-time home buyers that are that's on that website. Again, we have information for people. Some people struggle with foreclosures. It doesn't matter what community you're in, whether you're in Foxborough, Norwood, Dover. Every community has had people that have struggled with foreclosures. And at the Registry of Deeds, we have partnered up with NeighborWorks of Southern Massachusetts and Quincy Community Action Program. They're non-profit groups, so they don't charge people, and they give advice, they give guidance. So if you know anyone in that situation, they can go on our website and get the information, and I urge people to contact. If you find yourself in that situation, or you know people that are struggling with foreclosure, these groups are great because they give you advice, they give you guidance, and that's what I like about them. They try to help people stay in the home, but also, if it's not looking good, they also try to have that tough conversation and try to help the people transition into other housing, if they can't save the home. So, again, there's good information on our website, good real estate information, and you can check. And you can check it out all the time. And please check, because we have registry news. For instance, if some of you want to learn how to use the computer and do research, on May 4th, we have a seminar. So we have a seminar at the registry at 4:30, which is open to the public, and people can come by. If you can't come by, in this green folder, we have a document called Norfolk Deeds Computer Assisted Research Guide. We hand that out at our computer seminar, and a lot of people say, hey, we just took that home and started working through it, and it actually was helpful. So if you can't come by the registry, you can try to go on your computer and start using it this way. And we also have some information in here that ties into our IT department, so they can walk you through. Because if you do want to look up information on your website, it's free access, it doesn't cost anything. It's as if you walked into the registry and opened a book. You can look up this information at the registry. What have we done? I'm very proud that for the first time we have internet land record research in Norfolk County. We have used the advances in technology to try to bring the registry's records into people's homes and businesses. And what does that mean? Well, for instance, if you go on our website, www.norfolkdeeds.org, you can look up all this information. Now, we have Bob and Alicia here, and if you need any copies of anything, or we can look up things, we can do it today. But the computers they're looking at are just like the computers at your home. You can tie into the registry and look all that information up. And again, it didn't happen overnight. The staff's been great. When we first started, we worked our way backwards. I don't tell great jokes or anything, but does anyone know when Norfolk County was established? It was 1793, a long time ago, and Foxborough is one of the 28 communities that make up Norfolk County. And there's a tremendous history in Norfolk County. Does anyone know there were 4 presidents born in Norfolk County? Like I said, I don't tell good jokes or anything, but we got trivia here. Does anyone know the 4 presidents that were born in Norfolk County?
Yeah, Kennedy.
Yes, John Kennedy from Brookline.
Bush was born
you're
in
good.
Milton.
George Herbert Walker Bush was born in Milton, and a lot of people don't realize that. And then John Adams and John Quincy Adams. So 4 presidents. So there's a lot of great history in Norfolk County, and a lot of that history is in the records. As a matter of fact, here we are in Foxborough. The first document that was recorded in 1793 was in Foxborough Land Division, a division of land here in Foxborough. And if you enter Book 1, Page 1, you can view that document online. So all our documents, it didn't happen overnight. As I said, we started that modernization effort when I got to the Registry of Deeds. But we've scanned information in, so all the plans, all the records, all the plans and records on the land court side. There are 2 types of land in Norfolk County. 80% of the land is recorded on the recorded land side, and 20% is on the land court side. All that information is online. All that information is available if you want to look it up. Now, I always say this, and I know my staff, we've tried to strive to be a good customer service agency. But when way back talking to my dad about what you're doing, he's still alive. He's 85 years old. But and as I mentioned, he climbed poles for the Boston Edison for 38 years. I remember he saying, hey, you're doing all this modernization and computers. Some of us don't know anything about computers, don't care to know anything about computers, don't want to know anything about computers. So we do have a customer service center. We have a number you can call directly, 781-461-6101. Or if you're by the Registry of Deeds, there's a sign right there. We have staff there, we have computers there, and the staff will look things up. Much like we can do here today for you. So we do have a customer service center. We recognize that not everybody wants to learn about the computer. So I mentioned we're modernizing because everybody tries to use the computer, but if you don't, we've tried to accommodate you as well. And when you think about the information that's on, I want to give you a scope of what's on the internet. When I first started as registered, it was book 17,000. We're approaching now book 34,000. So since 2002, we have had over 17,000 books, which are about 600 pages each book. So there's been some, volume. Back in 03 and 04, we had over 650,000 documents in those 2 years recorded, because there was a tremendous amount of economic activity. Things have been slow. I know the economy's getting a little better. We haven't hit those numbers, but it's still been pretty busy. You probably see it in Foxborough. There's a lot of desirable communities. People want to live in these communities, and the brokers tell me that there's not enough inventory. So we've been busy at the registry. Was it as busy as it was before? No, but we've handled the volume, and all that information. As I said, back in 2002, we were at book 17,000. We're at book 34,000. All that information is on the computer. Now, we're one of the few registries. There's 21 registries around Massachusetts. We're one of the few registries that still print books. So again, if you're book-driven, and I like the history of the books, we're still printing them. It's expensive. I don't want to be the first register in Norfolk County's rich history dating back to 1793. They've been printing books since 1793 down there. I don't want to stop being, I don't want to be the one that does that. Other people feel differently, but right now, we're still printing books. So the books are there for people to look at. We still print the indexes, so you can do it the old-fashioned way, and we still have people that come in and do it the old-fashioned way. Yes?
Where the heck are you storing all those books?
Well, you can see we're at 7, we have a beautiful building. This building was built in 1903, and all those books are stored we have a big, huge record hall.
I've been there.
Yeah, it's there down in the basement. We all those books, if you go down, when the probate court left, and they went to Canton, we got the space down in the basement, and so there are closing rooms down there. Again, so if people want to do closings, when I used to be an attorney, there was like 2 tables upstairs everyone's fighting over, and it was probably good to play hockey. Then you could get the table real easy. But now we have some tables downstairs. We put some rooms there, and we have a lot of the shelves are in the closing rooms as well. So yes, we have 34,000, and that may be an issue down the line as far as where do you put the books. But we've put some high density shelving in, so we do have enough space. We've kind of gamed it out, so we're still printing the books because we have the space, because we're using high density shelving to do it. When I mentioned these closing rooms, which have the books, but you can also have tables, so if the attorneys and the brokers want to do the closings, you can come down to the registry and do the closings there. I got to thank the various historical societies and commissions, and Foxborough is no different. We did a project where we asked the societies and commissions to come up with a picture from your town, and they sent, every town sent us a picture, and we blew them up. And I know there was an old picture of the Foxborough Common, which we blew up with the trolley car, and it was a nice, actually it's that picture right there, because we have a bigger picture of that picture. Yeah, you're right there on the wall is the picture that we blew up. Thanks, Alicia. And so a lot of towns sent different pictures like that. So, again, we're trying to make, people that come to the registry, some may come once every 25 years. We try to make that experience a good experience. The staff has really embraced good customer service, and that's what we've tried to do. I was asked, as far as your records, just so you know, all your records are protected. By law, we have to microfilm. So we microfilm every document that comes through the Registry of Deeds. And we send that microfilm to various Iron Mountain facilities, whether the one's in New York, there's some in Massachusetts, they get sent there. So if something happens to that building on High Street, at least we have microfilm. More importantly, what we do is we back up. All the information is now on the computers. We have daily backup and weekly backup so that these drives, these tape drives, get sent off-site so that information is protected. Again, there's a renovated nuclear bunker that Iron Mountain has in Rhode Island, so our computer information gets sent there. So I just want people to know, and again, that didn't happen overnight. It's called business continuity planning. If you talk to corporations, that's a big thing. They want to, if a disaster happens, what are you doing to make sure that what you're doing is protected and what you're doing continues? So the first thing we did was try to protect the records and data. So I want you to feel assured that if you recorded a deed a long time ago, if something happens to this building, we have ways to get those deeds back. And when you think about it, it's important to you, it's your house, it's the biggest asset you have, but it's important to the economy because think about it, whether people are developing houses, selling houses, or commercially people buy land. I know you have property out in Route 1 that's being developed. If people can't rely on the title, or you don't have any confidence in what happened because the records got lost or destroyed, we'll have a problem. And the real estate is it's a pretty key part of our economy, not just here in Norfolk County, but Massachusetts and nationally. So we're taking steps to make sure your records are protected. And the other thing we've done is if something happens to the building, and I hope it doesn't, it's an old building. It was opened in 1903. The first elevator in Dedham, was in that building. Sometimes I think the elevator is still probably from 1903, but we just fixed it. We just actually updated it and everything a few years ago. But we also have a site off-site if something happens. The Norfolk County Agricultural High School has given us permission to set up a registry if something happens to that building. But we also have a site down in Dedham Center. It's a small building. It would be a struggle to operate, but it's ready to go. We have computer equipment in there. We have scanning equipment so that if something happens, at least we can keep the closings going, keeping the deeds getting recorded if you're buying a house or if you're refinancing the property, making sure the mortgages get recorded so you can get the money out of your house through a refinance. So we have an office there. It's called, it's our disaster recovery office. So we have put some thought, again, trying to apply private sector thinking to a government agency so that if something happens at High Street in Dedham, we're just going to go down the street and hopefully keep things going. There's always going to be change. I mean, I guess my uncle's, well, he didn't say it, you probably heard it, there's nothing as constant in life as change. So we're doing electronic recording. When I became registered, there wasn't any electronic recording. And electronic recording has been authorized by the federal government and the state legislature, where an attorney could be here in Foxborough or Bellingham. They do a closing at their office. Before, they used to have to run the documents down to the registry and things like that. Now, all they do is look up on their computer, make sure there's no liens that have come in last minute, and they transmit the documents over the internet. And so we record the documents. So we're one of the first registries in Massachusetts to do electronic recording. And I'm sure there'll be other advances in technology, and we're going to have to adapt to those advances in technology. But that's some of the things we've done. One project we have going is a transcription project. What we're doing from 1793 to 1900, when you came to the registry, probably the person with the best handwriting, the scrivener, would write out the documents that were recorded. So all those documents are handwritten, and they're very difficult to read. So we have a project going. I mentioned how if you go online and you enter book 1, page 1, if you hit the view button, which is like a book, you can view that document, and it's handwritten. And they're hard to read, but we have a transcription project where those documents are now getting typed out. We're starting with the deeds. The deeds, there's over 250,000 deeds between 1793 and 1900, and they're being typed out. So if you go online even tonight, You went to book 1, page 1, you can view that first document from Foxborough, and then you can hit a T button. It's called for transcription. It's a transcribed version. And yes, it may help the attorneys. Our principal job really is to make sure the records are recorded accurately, that they're secure, and that the community land records, that people have access to it. But I think by doing this, we're not only helping the attorneys. A lot of people who do genealogical and historical research have really complimented us on the fact that now the documents, you can read a little bit about them. For instance, there's a deed from John Adams to John Quincy Adams. There's another deed from John Adams, the second president of the United States, to the town of Quincy, where he talks about John Hancock and what a great leader John Hancock was in establishing this country, which is interesting because the governor that signed the legislation creating Norfolk County was Governor John Hancock, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. In that deed to the town of Quincy, John Adams, the president, talks about his views on education and how people should learn Greek. And so there's a lot of interesting information in these deeds. Sometimes what's listed on the deeds is everything that was in the house. You get kind of an idea of what people had in their house back in 1793, 1800. So there's a lot of history there. So our project has focused on the deeds. There's over 250,000 of them, 12.5 million lines that are being transcribed, and hopefully the project has been a success, is still a success, we're still working on it. We'd like to go to all the documents. So all this information is on the internet, all this information is available for you to look at, but we're trying to make the documents from 1793 to 1900 a little easier to read. And I mentioned I have 3 children, one's out of college, 2 are in college, but I noticed my son graduated Norwood High last year. Who knows? I went to parochial school, so believe me, you learn through the Palmer method, the cursive, and a lot of these kids don't know cursive. A few generations from now, you may have people that won't be able to read these documents because they're in cursive, they're not printed out. So it's a sad commentary, but that's another reason as I was getting into this project, I said, it may be good to type these all out because, people just don't know cursive anymore. So that's a little bit about some of the things we've done. Vicki Lowe asked me to talk about some consumer issues as well. And, one of the consumer issues, having worked in the district attorney's office, it's always a shame you see what people do to other people. There's all kinds of scams out. One scam, they target the elderly. If you know anyone that gets a letter like this, they send a letter out saying that for $15, they will get you a homestead form. Now, if you go on our website, I mentioned we have real estate information on our website, you can download that homestead form free. So for $15, they're going to charge you $15. They don't even fill out the homestead form for you. It's just a blank form. So if you know anyone that's getting that solicitation, just tell them to disregard it. And a lot of times, Vicki allows us to leave these folders around. If you look in the folder, we not only have information on the homestead, but we actually have the homestead forms here. So there's various forms. So don't pay $15 for a form that you can get, you can get free, really. Another kind, I call it a scam, the deed scam. And the reason why I mention it, it's still happening. There's an article in here on the handouts. It was a Boston Herald article talking about how for $60 this group was charging to get a certified copy of your deed. And it's great. The Boston Herald did a story on it. And again, we've written to not only the past Attorney General, the new Attorney General, as far as the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State as well. It may be legal what that group was doing. Because in fine print they say, this isn't a service, they kind of have a disclaimer. But for $60, they would get you a certified copy of your deed. Well, again, today, we'll certify a copy of your deed. We do it as a courtesy for free, but usually it's $2, okay? What that group was doing, they're taking your $60 for that certified copy of your deed, and they were coming to the registry, and for $2 getting a certified copy of your deed. And when they sent out the solicitation, when you went to their website, they would kind of act like you couldn't register your kid in school unless you had a certified copy of your deed. Quite frankly, it was like you couldn't get up in the morning if you didn't have a certified copy of your deed. A certified copy of your deed is great, But believe me, if you're going to sell your house, the professionals that are involved, they're going to go on the website, look up the information. It's good to have a certified copy of your deed, but it's not crucial. And you certainly shouldn't be paying $60 for it. So again, spread the word. And the reason why I mentioned spread the word is this was in the Herald. It's still happening. Karen Anderson, who's on TV, she came by the registry, had it on TV. It's still happening. WBZ Radio did a radio piece on this, and people are still getting solicited, and people, at least that group, they got you a certified copy of your deed. You might have paid $60, but it was certified. There's now a new group doing it, and for $83, they send what looks like a real estate bill. It looks like a bill, and it says document processing fee. In the fine print, they have that disclaimer, which the Attorney General's office, again, the Attorney General's office says it's legal, but they even put out a consumer alert to people saying, be aware of this. So for $83, they don't even give you the certified copy. They just get a copy. They don't even certify it for you. But they make it look like it's a bill. And again, I think this practice is unethical. I think it takes advantage of people. It preys on the consumer. So the best I can do as the Registry of Deeds is just go to groups like this. Thank Foxboro Cable for being here. Spread the word. So if you get a solicitation like that, either a letter or something that looks like a tax bill, disregard it. Come directly to the Registry of Deeds if you need to get a certified copy of any documents. I was asked also, and again, I don't bring this up, mortgage discharges. I don't bring this up to worry people. When you borrowed money, we all borrow money. You have to borrow money. You want to buy a house, you got to borrow money. You're sending people to buy a car, or sending your kids to school. The bank records a mortgage. The bank records that mortgage at the Registry of Deeds to make sure they get paid back. And what we've been seeing at the registry is a lot of times the mortgage discharge, which is a 1- or 2-page document that tells the world that that mortgage has been paid off, hasn't been recorded at the Registry of Deeds. Now, part of the problem, I'm a big believer in community banking. You got a lot of good community banks in this area. If you need a mortgage discharge, you go down to that local community bank. They look up the information. They'll probably grab one of the offices of the bank, and they'll have a discharge ready for you to be recorded. It's just some of the bigger banks, and people forget, in 08, in 09, there's a movie out there now, The Big Short. Some of these bigger banks don't always follow the rules. They certainly did a lot of things that I think hurt the integrity of the recording system. And what we're seeing is a lot of people's discharges haven't been recorded. And you could blame the banks. You can maybe check with the attorney who did the closing. But ultimately, it's going to be on you. When you go to sell the house or you go to refinance, you should just make sure your mortgage discharges are out there, that they've been recorded. Because that 1-page or 2-page document tells the world that it's been paid off. Yes.
I was just wondering, what about a home equity line? Would that be a discharge?
That's a good
paper
question,
also?
because a lot of people say, oh, a home equity line isn't a mortgage. Well, it is. You borrowed money. So if you still have an open home equity line, of course it's not going to be discharged because you're still using it maybe. It hasn't been closed out. But you should check your history, because if you had an equity line 20 years ago and you had closed it out, you want to make sure that that's been discharged as well, because it usually was a separate document from the original mortgage. And the reason I bring that up, we see it at the registry where people, we do office hours. We do office hours at the town halls, again, drawing on Congressman Moakley's experience. And people come in and they're like, I need to get a mortgage discharge, but this thing, I paid this off 20 years ago. And some people have all these documents, and I say, well, let's go through your documents. And sure enough, there's the discharge right there. Sometimes the banks didn't make clear that you should take that discharge to get recorded. Other times the banks, especially the bigger banks, said they were going to take care of it, and they never took care of it. Again, the local community banks, the smaller banks didn't get this country in trouble back in 08 and 09. It was the big banks. And the local community banks follow the rules. So, I think they've either recorded the mortgages or try to make clear when they send you the information that you should make sure that discharge gets recorded. Yes, sir?
The discharge costs money to record though, right?
Yes, again, the fees at the registry, don't blame the Register of Deeds, but they're set by the state legislature. The state legislature sets the fees, and that's a good point. The filing fee is $76, again, set by the state legislature. If the Register of Deeds doesn't collect that money, he's going to get indicted by the Department of Revenue, and that's not going to happen, I'll tell you that. So we collect the fees. So there is a fee to the discharge. But the point I'm trying to make, it's not like we're trying to get your fees. It's when you go to do a closing, and we see it a lot, where people say, hey, I need that. You've got an outstanding mortgage here. Oh, I paid that off 20 years ago. Well, the closing attorneys they don't want problems either. They're like, well, I need a discharge. And one of the documents that's in the green folder is a document that says, where has my bank gone? We've tried to put this together because, I remember one of the banks in Norway, Union Warren Savings Bank. I don't know what it is now, but I think Citizens. I have no idea. But this, where has my bank gone, has state resources and federal resources, websites you can check, telephone numbers you can call that says, hey, what happened to my bank? Because people forget in the 1990s, some banks went out of business. A lot of banks have merged. So, again, I don't say this to worry people. I say it because you'd rather check on this stuff when you're not under the gun, when you're not, getting that call 2 days before a closing saying, hey, you're selling your house, you need to get a discharge. Because at times it's just trying to get to that right person at the bank that says, oh yeah, I can help you out and get that discharge. Again, I see it around the county. The community banks are great about it. If you have a local community bank, they're going to look it up and they're going to help you out. Some of the bigger banks, in fairness to them, they're getting better. They're getting better in part because they got sued in part by the Attorney General's office on some of the practices that were going on. So I don't mention this mortgage discharge issue to worry you. It's just something to be aware of, and it's something that people can check on. It's something we can check on here today. You can either do it from your home on your website, but it's as simple as when Bob and Alicia check it, they run your name, all the information comes out, if it's on the recorded land side, and we start looking at the mortgages, and we can, what they call, abstract the mortgage, and it says satisfied, yes or no. If it's yes, it means the discharge is recorded. If it's no, it means it's outstanding. And that was a good question because we see it a lot too, where home equity lines that have been closed out for years haven't been discharged. So you got to get that piece of paper that tells the world that that's been closed out and paid off. Another consumer issue that really I think everyone should consider is the homestead. And again, whether people do the homestead or not, we're just a service of government. We're not, going to, the money doesn't help us. Most of the fees get sent to the state anyway. But the homestead is a creature of the state legislature. Chapter 188 allows people that own a home in Massachusetts to declare an estate of homestead. And if you own the home, it has to be in Massachusetts law, under Massachusetts law, a principal residence. You can declare an estate of homestead. And what does that do? Well, it prevents the forced sale of your home. And it's relevant. When I first became registered, it was $300,000 worth of protection. It got increased in 2004 to $500,000 protection. And the legislature recently wrote up, they didn't increase the amount, but they're always looking at it. And in 2011, they made some changes. And, attorneys may not like this. I'm an attorney, I guess I can say it is. You talk to 10 different attorneys sometimes, you get 10 different opinions on things. But when it comes to the homestead, I'd say 9.9 out of 10 would say that is something that consumers, that's something that people that own a home should do. The filing fee, again, set by the state legislature is relatively modest compared to the other filing fees. It's $36. And what does it do? Well, I tell people what it doesn't do. If you have a homestead that's recorded, if you don't pay the bank, they could foreclose on your property. So the homestead doesn't protect you there. If you don't pay your taxes to the town of Foxborough, again, the homestead doesn't, stop that. The Foxborough, the town of Foxborough try to take the property by tax title because you've got to pay your taxes. But the best situation I tell people is most people probably drove a car to get here. And sometimes people cut the car insurance. People are on fixed incomes, taxes are going up. And you might think you have a lot of insurance on your car. And I'll use the amount of $100,000. That sounds like a lot. And you're driving around, in case you hit someone, you have a $100,000 policy on your car. But then you hit someone, and you hurt someone really bad. And just say that case is worth, $450,000. Well, the insurance company is going to pay off $100,000 to the injured party, but the case is worth $450,000. That injured party is going to look to, again, your assets, and the biggest assets most people have are the homes. And by having a homestead, it sort of puts a picket fence around the home, that you can't force the sale of that house, your principal residence, to satisfy that debt. So for that reason alone, I mean, it's no substitute for good insurance, which maybe is another speaker here at the Senior Center. But, it's no substitute for good insurance. But having a homestead is a good way to protect your home. Now, there are other things that have been written into the statute if you have a homestead that protects you. For instance, if you go to sell your home and the check comes in and you have all these proceeds from the sale, if you've recorded a homestead on your property, those proceeds are protected from creditors swooping in, again, for a limited period of time. It's 1 year. But again, they can't, if the homestead's recorded, it protects the monies from the sale of your house for a limited period of time. If you had your house, say it got on fire and burnt down, and you got a casualty insurance check to rebuild the house, the creditors can't come in, if you have a homestead recorded, and swoop in on that money. Again, for a limited period of time, in that case, 2 years. So there's a lot of little things like that that are built in if you have a homestead, built-in protections. So I just think it's a good thing to consider. It's a relatively simple document to be filled out. They need a deed reference, which can be looked up, and the new law in 2011, it used to be when I first bought a house, I could declare a homestead for the benefit of my spouse, or my spouse could declare the homestead for the benefit of me. Now everyone who owns the house has to sign off on a homestead. So everyone has to sign off. So it's just something that people might want to consider, and I think you see it more and more, that more and more people are recording the homestead. The good news I'll tell you about things, however, March 16th, 2011, the legislature has looked at these things. For the first time in Massachusetts history, they have an automatic homestead. So if you've never put a homestead on your property, you have an automatic homestead that went into effect March 16th, 2011. It's for $125,000, and it gets a portion depending on how many people own the home. My thinking is, say, for $36 filing fee, I'd rather have the $500,000 worth of protection. But at least, you got to thank your state representatives and your state senators, because, they listen to different consumer groups. They live, as a Registry of Deeds, I'm part of a Massachusetts Registry of Deeds Association. So, when the legislature at least listen to the consumers, because you got to remember, there's people that don't want you to protect your assets because they're trying to, get debts and things like that, collected. Yes.
How does putting your home in a trust compare with the homestead?
Well, I am no expert on estate planning. So if you've taken your time to put the property in trust, I always say go back to that attorney or that advisor. But that was the purpose of putting a home in trust. Sometimes it was for estate planning because of nursing homes, and again, I'm no expert on that. I'll be the first to tell you that. And by putting it in trust, it protected the home from, say, the individual if he or she had some liabilities. It's interesting that under the new law, if you have property in trust, for the first time, Massachusetts, the legislature said that you can put a homestead on a property that's in trust. So the trust is, it's almost like an individual when they incorporate, sometimes the local businessmen incorporate, you're trying to limit your liability. There was a case law in Massachusetts on the land court side. I mentioned 20% of Norfolk counties in the land court, where the appeals court said, that property's in trust. That means the trust owns the house, not the individual. Only individuals can declare homesteads, therefore trusts cannot declare, and if you have the property in trust, you can't put a homestead on it. But there's been changes, so if you've put your property in trust, you might want to go back to the attorney or to the person who you've gotten advice from and say, you know, there was a change that allows, again, a homestead to be put on it if the property's in trust. So the legislature overrode that case law. And you should go back to your advisor and say, well, what do you think? You know, and solicit opinions. Again, the trustee has to make certain representations, because I mentioned if just a regular, like my spouse and I, my wife and I, we have to make a representation that we're living in the property, it's our principal residence. And if the property's in trust, the trustee has to make certain representations. Maybe a couple of the beneficiaries of the trust are living in the house. So yes, a trust protects the home. That's what people did. A lot of people do it for estate planning purposes. But if you find yourself in a situation, whether you own the house with your spouse, whether you own it individually, or whether you put it in trust, especially if you put it in trust, go back to your counselor or to your person who gave you advice and mention, oh, you know, I understand that the statute's been changed. What do you think? And also, as far as age, I know the state legislature has defined elderly as 62 and above. So, you know, if you're 62 and above, you can put on an elderly homestead. But tell people, if someone's lucky enough, I wasn't lucky enough at 18 to own a home, they have a right to put a homestead on. You know, it doesn't matter how, you know, if it's your principal residence, if you're 22, you're just getting out of college and that's the house you own or the condo you own, you have a right to put a homestead on. And remember, the homestead runs with the land. So if you have a nice home in Foxborough and now you sell the home in Foxborough and you might be downsizing and you buy a condo in Foxborough, that you have to put another homestead on because it's a new residence. So the homestead only goes with that property. So if suddenly you sold your home and now you're in a condo, you should consider putting a homestead on the property. The other thing you might want to thank your legislators for, they put language in, again, March 16, 2011, whether people realized it or not, sometimes when you refinanced, you terminated your homestead, and people didn't even know about it. There was a one-sentence clause in the mortgages that said, you know, that you terminated your homestead. I know this, I'll give you my personal experience. You know, hey, you know, kids, you got to refinance, take a look at a little equity out of the house, and a great bank, community bank, and I said, hey, you don't need that, because if I don't pay you, you can foreclose on me. But, you know, they have attorneys, and, you know, everyone's, you know, get forms, and no one can change the form. So what happened was, you refinance and great rate, everything like that. I just put another homestead on. I didn't want someone 20 years from now saying, oh, yeah, when you refinanced, you terminated your homestead. And the reason I mention it is, some people would argue that, oh, when that language, it didn't terminate the homestead, it only relinquished it for that one transaction. Listen, I don't want to be fighting some creditor 10 or 15 or 20 years from now on words. So I just did it. I just put another one on. The good news is the legislature on that statute that went into effect March 16, 2011 said if there is language in mortgages that terminate the homestead, it does not terminate the homestead. Now, the law went into effect March 16, 2011. I always tell people you might want to look, you know, if you're relying on a homestead that was recorded before then, you might just want to make sure that there was no mortgage terminating it. But the good news is, if that language is in there now or after that date, you know, the legislators thanked them. They listened to consumer groups. They listened to the Registers of Deeds Association, where you're saying, hey, people are getting their homesteads terminated and they don't even know it. So that's some you know, good that happens. You know, I'd open it up to questions. I hope I haven't bored you. I know I've been droning on, but there's a lot of good information at the registry, whether it's information that is pertinent to your affairs, to your business affairs. There's good information if you just want to do some genealogical and historical research. And there's protections that are out there that a lot of people aren't aware of. You might have done all this, take our brochures, go back to, again, your children, your grandchildren, they're the ones that are out probably, paying the bills, they're running around, going to soccer and hockey and all that, and sometimes might not have, be able to come to a meeting where they learn something about protecting their home, and the biggest asset they have is their home. So please feel free to take our information. My card's there. You feel free to call anytime. You can go on our website and go from there. Yes?
Can you confirm mortgage discharges and homesteads online?
Yes, yes. Again, we have staff here. We can do it today for you. Or if you go online, that's what I mentioned. When he mentions online, you could enter your name, and there's all kinds of filters, but keep it broad. It lists everything that pertains to you, and then it goes by name, and then sometimes you might have sold an old house, and so you don't care about that. You're just caring about your current house because that's the mortgage that you care about. And you can hit, they call an abstract button, and it will say yes or no. And a lot of times, the discharge, there's a link there, you can link it, and it will take you right to the discharge.
So all your loan activity, if you've refinanced a few times, all of those discharges would be there, if you paid off the...
Yes, if it came, and that's what the problem was. Sometimes the banks did not send it to the registry, or sometimes the bank sent it to the consumer, but just didn't make it clear to people. You know how they send you the notes canceled and the mortgage is canceled? Sometimes...
Well, I could see that I had 3 refinances through the years. I would be able to tell. I would get a discharge on that one.
Right.
Which I should have to.
And sometimes people remember who the closing attorney is, and you go back, and sometimes it might be in the file. But ultimately, the information, it's all public record that's out there. We don't put anything on the internet. The registry, it's all public record. All those books, public record, all that information is public record, and you can look that information up. And a lot of times, if you do have time, and if you can't do it on May 4th, we usually have another one in the fall. Check our website. When we do kind of the computer seminar, we go through exercises on how to do some research, but also try to be functional about it. Like, hey, here's how you look up your mortgages. Here's how you can tell if there's a discharge. But it's all online. And if it's not there, if it doesn't say, if it says satisfied, yes or no, and it says N, then
look for your paperwork.
Try to track that discharge down. Yes, sir.
Might also indicate that if you've got a relatively common name, there could be, if you put your name in there could be pages of stuff. But if you put your address in there.
That's a good point, and it's funny. We're working on the addresses, and I want to put a caveat with respect to the addresses because the system, our recording system, they didn't have addresses. In fact, you didn't have to put addresses on deeds until 1969. So we're getting better when we index this information. They never index things by address. We operate now by address, but the land record system operates by, the stone wall and the river and things like that. So what we're trying to do is make it relevant. We've been entering the addresses. But if you don't pick up something by your address, I always say enter the name, because the system, going back to 1793, we might be doing it by computer, but it's built based on names. That's how the system started in 1793, and even though we're modernizing it with the computers and people can look it up, it's still based on names. So we are now back entering the addresses, but you got to understand, the documents, you weren't required to put an address on a deed until 1969. So you can enter it by address, but the best way is by name. And the gentleman's right. And these are the things you can do on the computer. You can filter. My name's Bill O'Donnell. You can do Bill O'Donnell from Norfolk. You can. You don't have to get every Bill O'Donnell in Norfolk County. You can get Bill O'Donnell for a limited period of time. You could go 50 years back. You could go 1 year back. And it's funny, you mentioned the computer and what can be done, and I forgot to mention this. Another thing we're proud of, we have what they call an opt-in notification process. And what's that? Well, I haven't seen it in Norfolk County since I've been at the registry since 2002. I haven't had the state police or law enforcement come in and say, hey, someone said that their name got forged or anything. But you talk to colleagues across the country, there are deeds, there are scams that go on that affect people's property. And if it's happening in California or Cooks County, it's only a matter of time before sometimes things come this way. I haven't seen it, but it could happen. So what's this consumer opt-in notification? What we do is you can sign up online and you get an email. You put your name in and you get an email if some document that has that name gets recorded. Now, my name's, I just put William O'Donnell. I get notices for William E. O'Donnell. I get notices for William P. O'Donnell, which is William Patrick O'Donnell. But when that William E. O'Donnell comes in for it, I get an email. I look, I go, oh, it's William E. O'Donnell. It's not me. And why are we doing this? Well, it may not stop the fraud, but if you got an email notification, you look up the information, and all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, that's my deed. It can't stop the fraud, but we have links to the law enforcement here around the county. We have a link to the district attorney's office where you can get on it pretty quickly. So you might not stop the fraud, but this opt-in notification, you just get an email. If something comes across, if something gets recorded in your name, you can get notified. You just an email. And some people might find it inconvenient, but we're getting a lot of people come and saying, this is very convenient. I hope I never have to use it, but I get a notice, and sometimes the notice is, if you have a common name, it's for someone else, and it's just the inconvenience, but that inconvenience is maybe the price you pay if someone did something to your property. If someone, fraudulently recorded a deed or something like that. They forged the deed and you get notified of it. And I know it works because we still work on back indexes, discharges and things like that. We're entering it. I get notified when someone on the staff, and it's not just me. I mean, I know they don't know it's me. I signed up just like a regular citizen like you would. If someone does some work on an old discharge, they were re-indexing it, it shoots an email out to you. So it's that sensitive where anything that is touched, because I've gotten an email and it's from old discharges that were recorded a long time ago, but we have this, we're always trying to update the indexes. So even when one of our employees touches it in an old way, an email gets shot out that, hey, there was something done to this document, check it out. So I've seen it where it's a William O'Donnell, it's not me, and I've seen it where it's me. But it was work that was being done, and it wasn't, So I mentioned that because, I mentioned the deed scam. I mean, $83 would seem like nothing compared to, someone doing something to your home that fraudulently. So I think it's a good thing to consider. And we have information on our website that you can look up, and you can make your own judgment. But again, we're trying to be proactive, recognizing the society we live in. Sometimes people don't do nice things to other people. But I think this is a good way to stay on top of things. So if something happens, you can get on it right away. If anyone has any other questions, yes.
Excuse me, why is it some people have a deed on heavy manila paper this long, and I have just a piece of paper that says quick deed?
Some of it's terminology, but a lot of it now is things are on the word processor, so they do the deeds on the 8x10, and it's a deed's a deed. Sometimes what you might be thinking too is, I mentioned 20% of your land is called land court or registered land. Registered land started in Massachusetts in 1899. Our first document was 1900. They established the land court probably because there were title issues, and it's a very expensive process to get your land registered. You have to get an attorney and engineers, and the land court has engineers and attorneys looking at it. And those people get a certificate of title. That's kind of, it used to be an owner's duplicate certificate of title, and now you don't necessarily need that. You used to need that to close. When I was a young attorney, we were always running into the land court because people would lose them. And you couldn't record unless you had it. So the legislature changed that because it was becoming stressful for people because they couldn't find it. But it's the same
So
deed.
quitclaim is-
The deeds are the same, whether you're on the recorded land side or the land court side, you own that property. It's just sometimes on the land court side, they give you what they call a certificate of title, which just has the legal description from the deed. And most consumers wouldn't know, you're just signing the deed. The deeds look the same, it's just, it gets recorded on the recorded land side, or it gets recorded on the land court side if it's land court land. But a deed's a deed, you know, but you just want to make sure, you know, the deed, a lot of those terms, you know, if you own the property jointly, if something happened, like my mother passed away when I was in law school, went to my dad jointly. But if you owned it as tenants in common, it's like 50-50, you know, so there's all, you know, sometimes those little clauses near your name mean something, which is why, you know, I always say, you know, the biggest asset we have is our homes. If you're doing something, you might want to, you know, there's a bar association or lawyers around, you want to consult, because I always say when I have plumbing problems, if I do it on my own, I make it worse. So I hate paying a plumber. People hate paying attorneys, but you know what? It's a very important thing if you are changing the deeds, or you know how you take ownership. So it's just something to be aware of. Yes.
Thank you for how you've explained everything so well. And
I haven't put you to sleep.
actually, it clarified for me, because knowing how when you first started, you wanted to update everything with the computers and all of that sort of thing. So I think I'm probably explains this letter that I got. And it came from you, signed by you, January of 2016. And it's concerning funds that are generated by the Community Preservation Act. And I'm a member of the Historical Society. So not only I, but 2 other members of the Historical Society received this. And on the back of the letter was a listing of all the Registry of Deeds and the Community Preservation Act, and Foxborough was listed, and it shows $61,000, $61,420. And in your letter, it was explained that the monies are forwarded to the revenue on a monthly basis, the fees that were collected by the agency. So apparently Foxborough never took advantage of this CPA. That's correct?
The CPA, what happened, for people that don't know, is the Community Preservation Act started in 2001. In fact, the first 3 towns, Medway, Cohasset, and Norfolk, jumped on it there. The last couple of years, we monitored it because we collect the money. I sent letters out. My town in Norwood, they have never even voted on it. Other towns have adopted the CPA. That's really up to the local level. What I tried to do with that letter was to point out there are surcharges on every document that gets recorded under the CPA statute. So, when I mentioned, you mentioned Foxborough, I listed all 28 communities because that money has gotten collected on Foxborough documents. And they send that money into the state, and then the state distributes it to the towns or communities that adopted the CPA. And the reason I put it out there is, just so people know that these revenues get collected. If you don't have a CPA, and again, that's a local decision that has to be made. Some people view it as a tax and they don't want to do it. The CPA monies, if you adopt it, can be used for historical preservation. They can be used for open space and recreation. Some people have used it for artificial turf and things like that, and housing. So there's different, and each community group, each community has to adopt, have an agent, a group of officials. So we sent it to, Conservation Commission, Planning Board, CPA people, just to point out, and it sparked an interest. I know it sparked an interest in Norwood because people, we have a town hall that was there in 1928. The town of Needham used their CPA money to redo the town hall. So I'm not making any judgments on it, but it's towns have leveraged the money because they get it from the state. Some of those towns that jumped in first, like Medway and Cohasset and Norfolk, they got 100% reimbursement. They thought they were only going to get it for 3 years. They got it for more than that. You know, they got it for like close to 7 years, 100% reimbursement.
Well, why wouldn't most towns want to do it if that?
I think a lot of times people perceive it as a tax, but
would
I
be a
think
tax
what it
if it
shows
was
is the
fixed?
money's going to the state, so the town of Lexington, or sometimes the rich towns get richer. Norwood's not a rich town, I'm from Norwood, but they're frugal, and they run a tight ship, and sometimes people miss opportunities to leverage, and you know, you see, like I always say, the rich get richer sometimes. And some of the better off communities had done the CPA, and they used it, you know, to help with ball fields or acquire open space and things like that. So I wrote that out there just to let communities know, here's the money that gets collected as a surcharge for Norwood documents or Foxborough documents. All that money gets sent to the Department of Revenue. How they get the money back to the communities, but if you don't have a CPA, you don't even get access to that. That money that's getting collected in Norwood is getting shipped out somewhere else.
So is there filing fees for the CPA?
No, the state legislature put, there's a surcharge. Like, it's like a $10, $20, there's surcharges on the document. So part of that fee, you know, like when you pay a fee, the fees that get collected, they get a portion. And the state legislature, when they set the fees, there's a surcharge for CPA on every document. Not all documents, I think the municipal lien certificate's excluded. There's some exclusions.
But no, what I mean is to apply for that. Is there?
Well, you have to. It's very.
How do you apply?
We could talk
for
to you
it?
later. You have to. The communities have to adopt it.
Yeah, but how do you go about that? I mean.
Oh, that's. It's you got to get a group. You got to get it through. You know, if you have town meeting. You got to get it
Put it on the
adopted. I know
warrant.
in Quincy they had a vote. You got to vote on it. So it's not as easy a process. And again, some people view it as a tax. So you know but. It starts with citizens getting together, and whether you agree with it or not, you know, I just felt it's registered that the communities in Norfolk County should know what's being collected and getting, you know, sent off on that.
Point is, even if we don't belong, that little surcharge is already on that document for everybody.
But the state legislature, those documents, those surcharges are on a document, and it's not like, oh, do you belong to the CPA? Oh, it's not there.
So every Foxborough document, though, is already having that taken.
A surcharge, there's a surcharge,
There's a
and some people view it as a user fee, but that's how the state legislature set up this, you know, Community Preservation Act. That's how they set it up. So, as I said, in Norwood, they haven't even voted on it because it was viewed as a tax. Those Norwood documents, you know, that revenue, by law, I mentioned Department of Revenue, you know, we collect the monies. A lot of the monies that get collected in registry go up to the state, and they get.
Point is, we're already paying for it, so to speak. Why not get some of it back?
And that's why a lot of communities, I know Braintree, a lot of communities, that's why Quincy was another one, have adopted it. Some may be late to the dance, but they feel better late than never, you know. So some of the towns that jumped in really quick, and again, if you know, you might want to contact, we could talk to you later, someone in Medway, or how they got it through. But they've certainly done a lot, especially some of those towns. Well, Foxborough's one of them. I mean, I'm sure there's pressures to develop land, and sometimes the monies that were used was to acquire open space, which helped preserve the character of the community. So, but yeah, you're right. So
Sounds like a question for Keating.
It's for somebody, that's
Yeah.
for sure. I can't figure it out.
Well, we could get you some information on it, but it's really a locally driven, you know, it's interested citizens getting together, and I know in Norwood, some of the planning board members are now kind of pursuing a town meeting article and see where that takes it before it gets voted on by the public. But it's, you know, it's like anything. It's you know, citizen participation really that gets.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Well, I really appreciate it. As I said, the beauty of the internet, we have access to the documents. If you need to look up anything, we can help you out. Or you need a copy of your deed, I won't charge you $60. It will be free. But thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned something. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much.